Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to another video on my channel, HAIRLICIOUSLY. If you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe so you guys are updated on hair loss and hair transplant content, as well as updates on current hair loss treatments in the pipeline. Visit my website at HAIRLICIOUSLY.com for all of your hair loss treatment needs, as well as one-on-one consultations regarding anything pertaining to hair loss and hair transplants. Now, before we get started, I wanted to remind you once again that Dr. Acar from Cosmedica will be visiting Los Angeles on August 11th. And he will be holding a conference to offer free one-on-one hair transplant consultations. You'll also be able to enter for a chance to win a hair transplant. So make sure to attend if you guys are able to. I will also be there, so I look forward to meeting a lot of you guys at the conference. I will have all of the information and forms that you will need to fill out in the description box below. So in today's video, I actually wanted to talk about a fun topic, and that's microneedling for the treatment of androgen alopecia. It's been a while since I've talked about microneedling, and there actually has been a recent 2023 study that some viewers had sent my way, and they just kind of wanted me to take a look and give you guys my 2 cents. And the study is interesting because it actually showed that microneedling did not result in any improvement in hair density or hair count, and seemed to be going against the conclusions of the vast majority of studies that show the benefits of microneedling in promoting hair growth. I am a strong advocate when it comes to incorporating microneedling to promote hair growth, especially if it's used in conjunction with 5-AR inhibitors, anti-androgens, growth stimulants. And that's mainly because microneedling works in a different mechanism of action compared to the other conventional treatments like finasteride, dutasteride, minoxidil. And we know that microneedling is known to release growth factors through platelet activation and the skin wound regeneration mechanism. It also activates stem cells in the hair bulge area and enhances the expression of hair growth related genes, the Wnt, and several other pathways that work synergistically to promote hair growth. We also know that microneedling also helps with increasing the absorption rate of topicals such as minoxidil, topical finasteride, topical dutasteride. And over the years, there has been some notable studies. One of the most well-known studies that you guys are probably familiar with, and also with larger sample study, is from Dr. Durat. And it involved a randomized, blinded study on the effects of microneedling in androgen alopecia patients. And from that study, randomized groups were either offered weekly microneedling treatment using a 1.5 millimeter dermal roller with 5% minoxidil twice a day, or just minoxidil by itself. And it turned out that the mean change in hair count at 12 weeks was significantly greater for the microneedling plus the minoxidil group compared to just the minoxidil group by almost 4 times. And I believe it was like 80 something hairs compared to just 22 hairs. This particular study showed that microneedling with minoxidil was statistically superior to just the minoxidil treated group in promoting hair growth. I will note though that adding in a third group that was just incorporating microneedling as monotherapy would have been beneficial, so that we could have seen the effects of microneedling compared to the other groups. But unfortunately that was not the case. And on top of that, there has been a tremendous amount of anecdotal before and after results posted on various hair loss forums, Tress lists, where people have incorporated microneedling into their hair loss treatment regimen and have seen some pretty drastic improvement in density and also hair growth. And most people who are microneedling are generally doing a different combination of hair loss treatment that could obviously influence, the results for obvious reasons. I think that's the important thing to really take away, is that there really isn't a lot of studies focusing on the efficacy of microneedling as monotherapy as I'd like. And personally, for this reason, I advocate microneedling to be used in conjunction with other hair loss treatments for optimal results. And this is where the best results have actually been seen. But the bottom line here is that most people who are using microneedling in general feel that some form of needling has been a real difference maker, no matter what other topicals or drugs that they've been on. And it would be great if there were a way to test different scenarios with microneedling, combined with different treatments, and also as monotherapy, like I mentioned, using either a much larger sample size than from the studies that we've encountered with microneedling, so that we can get more accurate results. Looking into things like the frequency and different needle lengths, and also the pressure that's applied, maybe even individualizing based on the thickness of a person's scalp, based on the degree of hair loss. And I feel that way, we can get a more accurate conclusion on what the therapeutic window is for microneedling for optimal results. So let's go ahead and take a look at this 2023 Brazilian study titled Efficacy and Safety of Scalp Microneedling in Male Pattern Hair Loss. This was published in January 2023 and involved a small sample size of just 30 patients in a randomized single-blinded study who had submitted to 4 monthly scalp microneedling sessions. 15 patients were using a 192 needle derm roller, while the other 15 were using a motorized tattoo cartridge device. Both devices were at 1.5 millimeters applied vertically, horizontally, oblique directions until pinpoint bleeding was achieved. Scalp coverage and hair density changes were measured at baseline and after 4 and 16 weeks of the last microneedling session. Adverse events were observed throughout the study. Scalp biopsies were performed before and after to investigate for scarring changes. So one thing to note right off the bat before we continue is that instead of the typical microneedling session once a week that we generally see from most of the studies, this study focused on microneedling once every 4 weeks. And honestly, if you're microneedling once a month at 1.5 millimeters, I personally don't believe that that may be enough to see any results, because most studies typically microneedle at a frequency of once a week. Subjects were all north 3 vertex or greater. They were not allowed to use any drug known to stimulate hair growth during the study. Subjects who were on previous topical and hormonal treatments had a washout period of 6 and 12 months respectively. So when they're talking about topical and hormonal treatments, that's likely to be the typical conventional treatment, minoxidil, finasteride, or dutasteride. And despite the washout period of at least 6 months, the problem that I see in this study is that 6 months may not be enough time for someone to revert back to their baseline upon cessation of any type of treatment. They can still very well be shedding and losing hair because they have stopped treatment for the past few months, and this would obviously provide inconsistencies to the study results. There was also no control group in the study, which I think should have at least been there to see how they would have compared. Here is a distribution of participants in roller and cartridge groups. 3 participants in the roller group and 1 in the tattoo cartridge group failed to show for the first follow-up visit. And for the second follow-up visit, 16 weeks after the last microneedling session, so 4 months after their last microneedling session, there were another 4 patients in the roller group and another 3 patients in the tattoo group who did not show up. So once again, we are dealing with a very, very small sample size. We now have 8 out of the 15 patients in the roller group and 11 out of the 15 in the needle group. And the problem with this very small sample size is high variability. A sample size that's too small reduces the power of the study and increases the margin of error, which can render the study meaningless. And so at the first follow-up visit, 4 out of 12 participants in the roller group and 2 out of the 14 participants in the tattoo cartridge group showed an improvement in clinical photos. Among the responders, only 2 patients in the roller group and 1 in the cartridge group sustained an improvement on the last follow-up visit. Neither group presented an improvement in total hair count after 4 monthly sessions of scalp microneedling. And when analyzed as a whole, all patients presented a decrease in hair density after 4 and 16 weeks of last treatment session. This was done via the trichol scan. So this particular study is basically saying that microneedling as monotherapy was detrimental. And you can see from this chart that most subjects were placed between a -2, -1, or 0, which means that they saw either moderately, slightly decreased, or no change in scalp coverage based on clinical photos. So the study also does mention that decrease in hair density was also more pronounced in the roller group compared to the cartridge group after 16 weeks of the last microneedling session. So here is another table showing hair density changes 4 and 16 weeks after the last microneedling session. We can see that the roller group after 16 weeks baseline showed significant decrease to the hair density change. So overall, there was obviously a different outcome in this study compared to some of the other ones we've seen that benefited from microneedling. And the author does mention that, they're not exactly sure why results were different in this study compared to the other ones, and a speculation being that the other published studies involved younger participants with shorter disease duration and greater number of scalp microneedling sessions, as I've mentioned. The author also wonders whether factors such as age, higher balding severity, and a longer disease duration could have led to a failure of patients to achieve benefits from microneedling. And I think it's worth noting that, generally speaking, there are no set and established standard protocols to microneedling where researchers have, really found that perfect medium between frequency and needle depth and application or needle size, what the best device is. And this is still an area that honestly needs to be further studied long term. But I will say though that microneedling, when used in conjunction with minoxidil, with 5-AR inhibitors, anti-androgens, all work in different mechanisms of action and has the potential to create a synergistic effect in stimulating hair growth. We all know for a fact that microneedling improves transdermal drug delivery when it's paired with minoxidil and other topical applications. And there's multiple studies implying that microneedling works by inducing various growth factors and signaling pathways. There's more studies out there on microneedling that show that's beneficial in promoting hair growth than not. And based on just so many anecdotal data from microneedling users, that we've seen from different hair loss platforms, it's rather difficult to say that microneedling doesn't have any therapeutic impact for hair growth. So my 2 cents is to not freak out over this study if you've been already religiously microneedling already. It was poorly done in my opinion. It had such a small sample size, no control group. Microneedling was done once a week as opposed to once a week. And then, they were reassessed 4 months after the last treatment session, which is odd to say the least. And patients who previously were on hair loss treatments may not have had ample time to revert back to their baseline, and this could have continued with shedding despite the washout period. So with that said, I wouldn't recommend microneedling as monotherapy only because it doesn't target the root cause of hair loss in order to really successfully become combating androgen alopecia. You need to incorporate something that will target the androgens or block them as a primary source of treatment. Minoxidil, microneedling, laser therapy, and other treatments would be considered secondary. And if you're not seeing hair loss stabilization or hair growth, these additional treatments are something that you can stack on top of your 5-AR inhibitors and or anti-androgens to maximize your chances of improvement. If microneedling has been working out for you, I highly recommend that you still continue to incorporate that into your regimen. I still recommend sticking with a 1.5 millimeter at the maximum as far as needle length, based on the general consensus on most available studies, and also recommend microneedling once a week at that needle length and achieving erythema or pinpoint bleeding at the most. But yeah, that's all I have in this video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my thoughts on the study and on just microneedling in general. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Take care, guys.